I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was at my desk, completely absorbed in the spreadsheets on my laptop, when my phone buzzed. My father's name flashed across the screen. Dad, a word that used to bring comfort but had lately become a source of stress. I answered, "Hey, Dad." There was silence at first. I figured it was a bad connection, but then I heard some rustling, the sound of a chair being moved, a heavy sigh, and finally his voice. "He's a failure. He'll never amount to anything." My stomach clenched. I froze, the phone still pressed to my ear. "Come on, Robert." My mother's voice cut in, softer but just as sharp. "He's doing fine. He pays the mortgage, doesn't he?" My father scoffed. "That's the least he can do after everything we've done for him. Do you think I'm proud of him? He was a mistake that should never have happened. A constant disappointment. And he actually thinks he's successful? He'll always be nothing more than a joke, a blunder, a laughingstock." His words hit me like a series of small cuts. My mouth felt dry, my grip on the phone tightened. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to yell, but I was stuck. I couldn't even breathe properly. "He's lucky we even let him be part of this family," my father continued. "I don't understand why he even tries so hard. He'll never belong." It hit me then. He hadn't meant to call me. He had forgotten to hang up. That's when the call suddenly ended. The silence in my apartment was overwhelming. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I sat there for what felt like forever, just staring blankly. For the past 6 years, I had been quietly paying their mortgage. They thought their payments were going to the bank, but the truth was that I was the one making sure they had a roof over their heads through JNS Enterprises, the company I had started with my financial advisor's help. I had bought their mortgage from the bank after they almost lost their house. They never bothered to read the fine print. They were completely oblivious. They had no idea they were living off my generosity, and now I realized they would never have cared anyway. My whole life, I had gone to great lengths to earn my father's approval. I worked harder than anyone, climbed the corporate ladder, earned more than he ever did, but it was never enough. It would never be enough. But this was the moment that changed everything. I exhaled slowly, my hands steady as I reached for my laptop. I opened the folder containing the mortgage agreements, the payment schedules, and the ownership documents. My father believed I was a failure, that I was insignificant. But soon, he would find out exactly who he had been depending on all these years. In just 1 week, he was in for a huge shock. That night, sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my father's words echoing in my mind like a broken record. He was a mistake that should have never happened. It wasn't just the insult, it was the conviction in his voice, the way he said it as if it were an absolute truth, like my very existence was a burden. I should have been used to it. My father had never been one to give compliments. Even when I was a kid, I had to fight for his approval. Straight A's? Not good enough. Promotions. Expected. Buying my first home? A stupid investment. Everything I did was either ignored or criticized. Yet, through it all, I held on to a small hope. Maybe if I worked hard enough, I could change his mind. That hope vanished the moment I overheard that call. By morning, I was done feeling hurt. I was done feeling anything. I dragged myself out of bed, made a cup of strong coffee, and sat down at my desk. The glow from my laptop screen lit up my tired eyes as I opened the folder labeled JNS Enterprises, property number 17, my parents' house. The mortgage they thought they were paying was actually in my name. The bank had transferred it to JNS Enterprises years ago when they were about to lose their home. Back then, my mother had called me crying, begging for my help. My father had refused to ask, too proud to admit defeat. But I stepped in anyway. I had created the perfect plan. They thought they were making payments to the bank, but in reality, every check they sent was going directly to my LLC. Of course, I was covering most of the costs. 6 years. 6 years of paying thousands each month so they could live comfortably, never once expecting a thank you, never once expecting them to show any gratitude, but I had hoped for basic decency. I clicked through the documents, my hands steady as I examined the details. When I first arranged the mortgage buyout, My financial advisor, Adam, had insisted on including a purchase option clause, a legal protection in case things went wrong. Back then, I had laughed. What could possibly go wrong? Now, I wasn't laughing. If they missed a payment, JNS Enterprises had the right to take full ownership of the house immediately. My parents would become month-to-month tenants, and if they didn't pay rent, I could evict them. Under state law, they had no idea how much power I truly held. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of it all sink in. My father thought I was a failure. He believed I would never achieve anything. But he had been living under my roof all this time. A bitter smile touched my lips. I had the power to take everything from them. The only question was, did they deserve it? As if on cue, my phone vibrated. Mom, hey sweetie, can you come over for dinner this Sunday? We'd love to see you. I stared at the message. The last time she invited me for dinner, it was for one reason: money. I considered ignoring it, but something deep inside urged me to play along. If my father could fake affection, then I could do the same. So I typed back, of course, looking forward to it. A lie, but a necessary one. Before closing my laptop, I had one last thing to check. My uncle, my dad's older brother, had always been on my side. He was the only family member who had ever made me feel valued. I texted him, hey Uncle Tom. I need to ask you something. Have you ever heard Dad say anything about me? Anything unusual? His response came almost instantly. Uncle Tom, David, we need to talk. I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but it's worse than you think. My chest tightened. Worse. What else had they been saying? The phone rang, and I answered on the first ring. Uncle Tom, he sighed. David, I've kept quiet for too long. But after what I heard last week, I can't stay silent anymore. I braced myself. What did they say? There was a pause. They don't just talk about you behind your back. They've been planning something. Your father, he's been looking into your finances. He's convinced you've been hiding money from them. He told your mom last week that if you don't willingly give them more cash, they'll find a way to force your hand. Blood rushed to my ears. Force my hand? How? He mentioned contacting your employer, trying to discredit you, maybe even reaching out to the IRS to audit you. A cold, sharp anger settled in my stomach. They weren't just ungrateful. They weren't merely cruel. They were willing to ruin me for money. I took a slow breath, my fingers clenching into fists. Uncle Tom, I need you to do something for me. Anything, sweetheart. I need proof. I didn't know what my parents had in store, but one thing was clear. They thought I was weak. They had no idea who they were dealing with. And in just a few days, they were going to find out just how wrong they were. I spent the next 2 days getting ready. If my father wanted to play dirty, I'd show him just how dangerous it could be to underestimate me. First, I called Adam, my financial advisor. David, he greeted, his voice warm. I take it this isn't just a social call. Not exactly, I replied, tapping my pen against the desk. I need to know how solid our agreement is on property number 17. If they miss a payment, how quickly can I act? Adam didn't hesitate. Immediately. The purchase option clause allows JNS Enterprises to take full ownership the moment they default. They wouldn't have any legal recourse unless they have $400,000 lying around to buy you out. I smirked. They don't. Then they're in trouble. I exhaled slowly, feeling a sense of control wash over me. Good. I need you to do one more thing. Keep an eye on their account. I suspect they're already struggling, and I need confirmation that their next payment will bounce. Adam chuckled. That won't take long. From what I can see, their balance is dangerously low. If they don't magically come up with $6,200 by the 15th, they're done for. I glanced at the calendar. That was just 4 days away. 4 days until my father, the man who called me a failure, would wake up to the reality that he had been living off my generosity. 4 days until he would have to plead for my help. I had no intention of giving it. On Sunday, I drove to my parents' house as if nothing had happened. The sight of their home, the home I owned, filled me with a strange sense of detachment. This place had once been my sanctuary. Now it felt like enemy territory. As I walked up the driveway, my mother swung the door open, her face lighting up. "David, sweetie, come in." Her enthusiasm felt forced. I recognized it now. I stepped inside, the aroma of garlic and roasted chicken filling the air. My father sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. My mother flitted around him, arranging dishes as if the perfect dinner would soften whatever they were about to ask of me. My brother Michael lounged in his chair, smirking. Unlike me, Michael had never had to fight for our father's approval. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, despite having no real accomplishments to his name. I took my seat, my expression carefully neutral. "David," my father finally said, his voice thick with forced warmth. "It's good to see you." I nodded. "You too, Dad." An awkward silence hung in the air before my mother chimed in, her voice dripping with sweetness. "We've been thinking a lot about family lately," she said, reaching across the table for my hand. "And how crucial it is to support one another during tough times." I remained silent. "That's true," my father exhaled, as if this was a struggle for him, as if he were the one making a sacrifice. "The truth is, David, we need your help. This month's mortgage payment is a bit tight." A bit tight. They were on the verge of default, and he was still downplaying it. "How much do you need?" I asked, pretending to be unaware. My mother hesitated. "We were thinking just an extra $3,500 a month. That should keep us stable." I nearly laughed. They had no idea I was already covering $6,200 every month, and now they wanted me to add another $3,500 on top of that. I set my fork down, tilting my head. "That's a lot of money." "It's nothing compared to what we've done for you," my father snapped, irritation breaking through his facade. "We raised you, gave you everything. The least you can do is support your family." I held his gaze, my blood running cold. The least I could do. These were the same people who had ridiculed me behind my back. The same father who had labeled me a failure while living under my roof. I took a slow sip of water, maintaining my composure. "I'll think about it." My mother sighed in relief. "Oh, sweetie, thank you. We knew we could count on you." I forced a smile. They had no idea that in just 3 days, they would lose everything. That night, I received a call from Adam. They defaulted. The word sent a wave of satisfaction through me. "They what?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "They didn't make the mortgage payment," Adam reiterated. "The funds weren't there." As of midnight tonight, JNS Enterprises officially owns the house outright. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. It was done. My father, the man who had looked down on me my entire life, was now my tenant. "Do you want to start the eviction process?" Adam asked. "Not yet." I wanted to see how long it would take for them to grasp the reality of the situation. I smiled, glancing at the framed family photo on my desk. It was from years ago, back when I still believed my father was capable of love. "Not yet," I murmured. "Let's see how far they're willing to go before they break. Because they will break, and this time, I won't be there to catch them." I didn't have to wait long. 3 days passed, and the silence from my parents was deafening. No calls, no texts, no guilt-laden messages about family sticking together. Nothing. I knew why. They hadn't realized it yet. They still thought their payment had gone through. They still believed they had everything under control. They had no idea that the house they lived in, the one they called home, was no longer theirs. At exactly 9:07 a.m. on Friday morning, the notification arrived in my inbox. Subject: Urgent, Default Notice, Property Number 17. From JNS Enterprises Legal Department. I opened the email, my heart racing with a mix of anticipation and satisfaction. The legal notice was cold, formal, and undeniable. Due to failure to submit the agreed-upon mortgage payment by the deadline of the 15th, the purchase option clause has been exercised. Effective immediately, JNS Enterprises is the sole owner of the property located at Oak Avenue. As per contractual agreements, the current occupants will be considered month-to-month tenants, subject to rental agreements moving forward. Failure to adhere to rental terms may result in eviction proceedings. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. This was it. I held all the power now. I didn't have to reach out to them. They would come to me first. At 9:42 a.m., my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:47 a.m., she called again. At 9:50 a.m., it was my father. I let them stew for a full hour before I finally picked up. David. My mother's voice was high-pitched and frantic. There's been some kind of mistake with the bank. We just got a notice saying we've defaulted on the mortgage, but that can't be right. You have to help us. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. It's not a mistake. Silence. What? My mother's voice was barely above a whisper. I said it's not a mistake. You didn't pay your mortgage, so the house, it's not yours anymore. A stunned pause. David, sweetie, what are you talking about? My mother let out a nervous laugh, as if this were all a joke. This is our house. I tilted my head. No, Mom. It was your house. But the moment you defaulted, JNS Enterprises took full ownership. Legally, you're now tenants. The weight of my words finally sank in. No, that's impossible, my father's voice interrupted, his usual authority cracking under the strain of panic. The mortgage is with the bank. We've been paying it for years. I let that hang in the air for a moment before dropping the final bombshell. You weren't paying the bank, Dad. You were paying me. Dead silence followed. Then, you're lying. I sighed. No, I'm not. 6 years ago, when you nearly lost this house, I bought the mortgage. You've been sending your payments to JNS Enterprises every month, thinking it was the bank, but it's my company. I paused for effect. I own this house. I always have. My mother's breath hitched. My father cursed under his breath. Then, my brother Michael, who had apparently been eavesdropping, laughed. You mean to tell me we've been paying rent to our own failure of a brother this whole time? He scoffed. Well, I guess that explains why the bank's such a mess. You probably messed up the paperwork, just like you screw up everything else. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to remain calm. Michael had always been like this, arrogant, cruel, entitled. Well, since you think I screw everything up, I said smoothly, you're going to love this part. Rent is due in 30 days, and if you can't pay, you're getting evicted. David, wait. My mother began, but my father cut her off. This is a bluff, he snapped. You wouldn't do this to your own family. I let out a short laugh. Wouldn't I? I thought about the years I had spent covering for them, the thousands upon thousands of dollars I had spent keeping them comfortable while they belittled me behind my back. I recalled my father's voice on that phone call. He was a mistake that should have never happened. I remembered how they had plotted to blackmail me, ruin my career, and steal from me if I didn't willingly hand over more money. My father had always believed I was weak. He was about to discover just how wrong he was. I've already spoken to my lawyer, I said calmly. If you don't pay, you're out. And if you try anything, any manipulation, any threats, any accidental damage to the house, I'll press charges. You ungrateful little. I hung up before my father could finish his sentence. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages. Mom. David, please don't do this. We're family. Let's talk. Dad. You'll regret this. Mark my words. Michael. You think you're so smart? You're just a bitter, pathetic loser. We'll find a way to take the house back. Watch. I read each message, then blocked their numbers. I had spent my entire life bending over backward for them. Now I was done. I leaned back in my chair, gazing out the window, allowing the weight of everything to settle over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't propping them up anymore. They were finally going to have to stand on their own. And if they fell, that was their problem, not mine. The days that followed were eerily quiet. No calls, no messages, no desperate pleas. I half expected my mother to show up at my door, crying and begging for forgiveness. I anticipated my father to rage, trying to intimidate me into reversing my decision. I thought my brother would scheme, searching for some loophole that would allow them to keep the house. But none of that happened. Instead, they went silent. I knew why. They weren't accepting their fate. They were plotting their next move. The desperate attempt came 3 days later, on a Wednesday morning. I was at work when my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I ignored it. A minute later, another call came in. Then an email arrived. Subject: urgent, home foreclosure mistake. From law offices. I opened it. Dear Mr. Hall, we have been contacted by your parents, Robert and Susan Hall, regarding the recent foreclosure of their home. They believe there has been a misunderstanding and would like to discuss the possibility of reinstating ownership. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to avoid further legal complications. Sincerely, Peter J. Williams, Esquire. I closed the email with a smirk. They had hired a lawyer. Of course they had. I forwarded the email to Adam, my financial advisor. Less than 10 minutes later, he called me back, laughing. They don't have a case, he said. They signed the mortgage contract. They signed the purchase option clause. They signed everything. They can't fight this in court because legally, you're in the right. I exhaled, relieved but not surprised. I figured. But they won't stop, will they? Adam chuckled. Probably not. But there's nothing they can do. I thought about my father, his pride, his arrogance, the way he would rather destroy me than admit he had failed. No, they wouldn't stop. They'd keep pushing until they had nothing left to hold on to. That night, as I was finishing up dinner, my phone rang. Uncle Tom. Hey, Uncle Tom. I just got off the phone with your father, he said without any pleasantries. His tone was serious. You need to be careful. I frowned. What now? He's not just trying to fight this legally, Tom sighed. He's looking for other ways to make you cave. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? He's calling your job, trying to get you fired. My stomach dropped. Are you serious? He told me word for word that if you won't give them back the house willingly, he'll ruin you another way. He mentioned contacting HR, fabricating a complaint, trying to frame you for fraud, anything that could get you out of the picture. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. Of course he would. Faced with his own failures, my father would rather burn everything down than admit defeat. But he wasn't just targeting the house anymore. He was coming after me. I wasn't about to wait for him to make his move. The next morning, I walked into HR myself. David, my manager Mark, greeted me warmly. What's up? I forced a small smile. I need to talk to you about something important, in private. He led me into his office, shutting the door behind him. I took a deep breath. I need to give you a heads up about something. My father, he's going to try and get me fired. Mark's brows furrowed. What? I explained everything. The mortgage, the default, the threats. As I finished, he let out a long breath and shook his head. David, let me be clear. You are not going anywhere. Relief flooded through me. We deal with stuff like this more often than you'd think, he continued. People with grudges, family drama, false reports. If your father calls, we'll document everything. But I promise you, he doesn't have the power to touch your job. He gave me a reassuring smile. I'll notify our legal team just in case. If he steps 1 foot out of line, we'll hit him with a cease and desist. I exhaled, the tension I hadn't realized I was carrying leaving my body. My father had lost his house, and now he had lost his power over me, too. That night, it happened. A knock at my door, a hard, urgent knock. I knew before I even opened it. I swung the door open, and there they were, my parents. My father stood rigid, his face flushed with anger. My mother's eyes were puffy from crying. David, she whispered, please. I folded my arms. What do you want? We need the house back, my father said, his voice low and threatening. You have no right to do this to us. I tilted my head, unimpressed. I have every right, legally, financially, morally. My mother clasped her hands together, desperation etched on her face. We raised you. We gave you everything. You're punishing us. For what? I interrupted sharply. For calling me a failure. For saying I was a mistake. For trying to ruin my life the moment I stopped giving you money. She flinched. My father's jaw tightened. You're being cruel. I let out a short, humorless laugh. No, Dad, I said, my voice steady. I'm being fair. A thick silence settled between us. Then my father's eyes darkened, his lips curling into a sneer. You'll regret this, David. You think you're winning, but you're not. You'll never be anything without us, and one day, you'll realize that. Something inside me clicked into place. The last remaining sliver of hope I had that he could ever change shattered. I met his gaze head-on. Then, I guess we'll see, won't we? Without another word, I shut the door in their faces. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. The moment I closed that door, I knew I was done, not just with their manipulation, not just with their entitlement, with them. I stood there for a long time, my hands gripping the doorknob, my heart pounding in my chest. I had spent years trying to earn my father's respect, years hoping that one day he'd look at me and see someone worth being proud of. But in that moment, as his threat still echoed in my ears, I realized something that should have been obvious all along. No matter what I did, it would never be enough for them. And I didn't need it to be. The next morning, I sent the final notice. Subject: Notice to vacate. Property number 17. From JNS Enterprises Legal Department. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Hall, as previously notified, the mortgage agreement for the property located at Oak Avenue is no longer in effect due to non-payment. As of today, your tenancy is officially terminated. You are required to vacate the premises within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in formal eviction proceedings. Please ensure all personal belongings are removed before the deadline to avoid legal complications. Sincerely, David Hall, owner, JNS Enterprises. I stared at the email for a long time before hitting send. This was it. They were out of my life. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. My mother called me 27 times that day. I didn't answer. My father left a single voicemail. You'll regret this one day. You'll come crawling back, and when you do, we won't be here. I listened to it twice, then deleted it. Michael, my brother, made one last desperate attempt. Michael, congrats. David, you just ruined our family. I hope you're happy. I didn't reply. They had spent years making me feel like I was the problem, like I was never enough, like I should be grateful just to exist in their world. But now, they were the ones without a home. And I was finally free. 30 days passed. I didn't visit the house. I didn't check in. I didn't ask if they needed help. I didn't need to. Adam took care of everything. He confirmed that they moved out the day before the deadline, likely trying to avoid the embarrassment of being formally evicted. The house was left mostly intact, though they took what they could and left the rest in heaps of garbage. Typical. I drove there one last time, just to see it. The house was quiet, empty. The home I had once cherished, the place where I had grown up, was now mine alone. But as I stood in the doorway, staring at the abandoned rooms, I felt nothing. No sadness, no guilt, no nostalgia. Just relief. I pulled out my phone and dialed Uncle Tom. They're gone, I said simply. He exhaled. How do you feel? I thought about it for a moment. Then, I smiled. Lighter. I sold the house 2 weeks later. The market was strong, and within days, it was off my hands. I used the profits to start a fund for young men escaping financially abusive families. Men who, like me, had been made to believe they owed their families everything just for being born. I knew how it felt to be trapped. I knew how it felt to believe that love had to be earned. But I had learned something important through all of this. Real family isn't defined by blood. It's determined by who truly stands by you. And my real family, it wasn't them. It was me. 3 months later, a message popped up in my inbox. It was from my mother. Mom, David, please, please. I don't know where else to go. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. A few months ago, I would have agonized over this. I would have questioned whether I was making the right decision, whether I was being too harsh, too cruel. But now, I simply deleted the message. Because some bridges deserve to be burned, and I wasn't looking back.